Arizona basketball is looking really good on the recruiting scene, and there's a lot of different stuff to look at.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I'm your host, Michael Luke. This show is brought to you today by Gametime. Check it out, Gametime. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All kinds of really, really good stuff going on at Gametime. As you know, check it out. Okay, now, we are going to talk almost exclusively Arizona basketball on this show. There is a lot to talk about when it comes to Arizona basketball recruiting and what this means going forward for the Wildcats. First, I think the first thing we need to look at is Tommy Lloyd obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to recruiting. Now, there's varying levels of that, obviously. When it comes to the transfer portal, he's an A+. You look at the players that he's been able to bring in, and they have almost all been hits to in some way, shape, or form, whether that is Umar Ballo, whether that is Caleb Love, whether that is Keyshawn Johnson, whether that is Jaden Bradley. I can keep going. He knows what he's doing when it comes to the transfer portal. Internationally, it has not been very good so far. Now, I do think that Mount Crevis is going to change all that. But I think that at this stage in the game, it's also fair to say that, Philly B, no. Conrad, likely no. Pauly M, I think is going to be good, but it wasn't here. Adama Ball, kind of the same thing. And so not been good. But domestic recruiting has been a little bit more of a mixed bag, obviously. KJ Lewis, obviously very good. Kylan Boswell, I still count as a hit, mainly because he was a big-time recruit that could have gone pretty much anywhere, but obviously he wasn't good here. Carter Bryant, much the same, could have gone pretty much anywhere. So there is that. And there's also the players that Arizona lost because of players coming back, like a Josan Sanon, maybe a Jamari Phillips. Players like that, you get the gist. So we're going to talk domestic recruiting, what this means. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Koa Peat. Koa Peat Koa Peat has been on the basketball recruiting radar forever. And when I say ever, I mean ever. I think is basically like an eighth grader. He is a five-star player, and a lot of times too, you wonder with five-star players, you're like, are they going to be a little bit maxed out? Are they, at an early age, especially ones that are built like him, or are they going to continue to be able to get better and better and better? And Koa Peat has continued to get better and better and better and better. He is He's going to be in the NBA for a long time. Now, at what level, I don't know, because again, he's a power forward. I don't really see him as a small forward. Maybe he can develop into that eventually, but generally, you don't develop into that. You either kind of are what you are, and I think with Koa Peat, I don't really see that one being the case. But either way, a very, very good basketball player and somebody that Tommy Lloyd has been recruiting for a long time. You got to remember, Dylan Anderson came from Gilbert Perry, the same, and then Cody Williams came from there. Koa Peat. He's the crown jewel. He's the one where you're like, all right, well, that's the one that you really, really want. And a big reason why is because there's absolutely no reason or no way that he's probably not going to be a hit. And when I say that, he's a player who you watch him and he understands basketball. He's very, very strong. He can finish. He can just do a lot of different things. It's very difficult to have a hard time seeing him turn into, and again, I like Cody Williams. I think he's going to be a very good pro at time, but there were a lot of times with Cody Williams where you watched him in college and you were just kind of like, whatever. I think Koa Peat is going to be an instant impact guy from day one. And not only do I think he's going to be an instant impact guy from day one, I think he's probably going to push to be one of the better players in the country. And I think realistic statistical expectations for him are probably 16 points, 7, 8 rebounds, something like that. He's coming here. If he's coming to the U of A, he's obviously going there to start, and then he's going to go off to the NBA. Now, I did say that because his family, all obviously football players outside of him. Todd Peat Sr. obviously played in the league. And then you've got Andrews Peat, who first-round pick from the New Orleans Saints out of Stanford. Todd Peat went to Nebraska. Cassius Peat went to Michigan State. It's obviously a very, very athletic family. I think Koa might, Andrews is obviously right up there. But Koa is really kind of the crown jewel, though. And Koa is the first recruit since, I think Marvin Bagley to really capture the nation's imagination as a freshman in state and somebody who is, domestically is a product of the state of Arizona. And this is going to be big because he can go obviously anywhere he wants. He's one of the 5 best prospects in the entire class. I do think that when it comes to Koa Peat, he is Arizona is in very good shape for him right now. Now, the NIL is going to be a massive part of this. It's just going to be a huge part of this because he's going to get paid. And I expect Arizona will, when it comes to NIL, if they are able to land Koa Peat, will probably put together about the most substantive package that it's ever put together for somebody. I mean, somebody like Caleb Love, obviously very good, but probably kind of in that $500,000 range. I think Koa Peat, and that's just a guess, Koa Peat is probably going to be north of that and significantly north of that. But Arizona's not going to be caught by surprise on this one. They've known for a long, long time that Koa Peat and what he would mean for Tommy Lloyd to be able to get a commitment from him. And I look for that. Like I said, right now, I think that Arizona is in very, very good shape for him. And I would call them the leader in the clubhouse. Again, things could change. You got 5 visits. Arizona is going to be his last visit. ASU is going to be his first one. There was some buzz about ASU for a while. Obviously, ASU's got a little bit of that Bobby Hurley money coming in, but at the same time, I just don't see him going there. His brother is obviously a walk-on on the football team, but if you were to ask me right now, where is Koa Peat going to go to college for 1 year? I think that he's probably going to go to the University of Arizona. And I think that, like I said, we'll see how it plays out. These things are obviously fluid, but Arizona feels very good about where they are right now. And again, this is something that's not going to take them by surprise. Tommy Lloyd has been at every single one of Koa Peat's games, and they've had more than enough time to be able to put kind of that NIL package together. You also got to understand, too, that this would be a real statement. I mean, if a kid that's indigenous to the state of Arizona comes through here and he's a 5-star dude, and Arizona wants him, generally Arizona should get that kid. Going back to Mike Bibby. Not only that, then you got obviously Richard Jefferson, you got Channing Frye, you got Jared Bayless with Sean Miller. He was able to, obviously Nick Johnson, guys like that. Arizona has generally had a stranglehold on those prospects, and I think that you're looking for that to continue if you're the University of Arizona, and I don't see any reason why it won't continue. But again, Koa Peat, he really emerged, right when Tommy Lloyd was taking over. So it's not like there's been a coach out there that's been able to have a longer relationship with Tommy Lloyd with Koa Peat than Tommy Lloyd. And I think that very much factors into the decision as well. It's not like Arizona's getting in there at the last second and you're trying to play catch up. Arizona has been able to do this. And Arizona, like I said, I think is in good shape. So we'll continue to keep you updated on that one. Now, you might say to yourself, where can I go watch Koa Peat, when he goes into college? Gametime. Check it out. Gametime. All kinds of good stuff. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. $20 off. Like I said, great stuff going on at Gametime. You can go to concerts. You can go to sporting events. You can go to a bunch of different things. You name it. Gametime generally has it. Download the Gametime app today. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Download the Gametime app. Again, use code LOCKEDON for $20, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you can get into lots of stuff at the last second. I know somebody that got into the Alamo Bowl last second, because they used the Gametime app. Be like that person. Be smart. Check out Gametime. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about some of these other players that are that have come up on the radar. And another one, obviously, that we've talked about a ton, and we're going to talk about somebody as well that's kind of in that same boat. Brayden Burries. Arizona has been on Brayden Burries basically as long as anybody. They've known that, Tommy Lloyd's been able to coach him, which obviously I think is an advantage. But at the same time, Arizona has been on top of this, and they prioritized him. Now, I think if you were to look at everybody in the entire of all the classes, I think Koa Peat is probably the priority for a lot of the reasons that we just laid out. But Brayden Burries is right up there. Brayden Burries is just a very, very good basketball player, and he's only going to be in college 1 year, but he's kind of the total package in that he is a very mature kid. He's got great size. I think some people are recruiting him as a combo guard. If he comes to the University of Arizona, he is going to play point guard. He is going to be a pure point guard, and that's going to be what his position is in the NBA. He can get downhill, but he can also, you watch him and you can also see a player that knows how to kind of get his teammates involved. He is, that he's what you kind of look at for he's maybe not the, a next level type, John Wall type athlete, but he's also a more than good enough athlete. He's very cerebral. He has a great understanding of the game. And again, somebody that Arizona would love to get. I think with Brayden Burries, what's fascinating is that, his recruitment has obviously taken off as his ranking has taken off. I mean, he's probably one of the top 5 to 7 players in the entire country. And, you watch him for 5 seconds and you can get. Arizona is very much in this, but then you look at some other schools, there's a UCLA, and again, he can pretty much go anywhere he wants. With the point guard spot, Arizona is going to need somebody because Jaden Bradley, I'm a bigger fan of Jaden Bradley than most. I expect Jaden Bradley to have a really breakout season this year. I think Jaden Bradley is going to put together a stellar campaign. And I think that he is going to really kind of push his way onto NBA charts. I believe that Jaden Bradley is an NBA player. I think it starts with his defense. I think he's going to be one of the best defensive players in all of college basketball this coming year. And if you're looking for a comparison, it's not perfect, but I think there's some Jamal Shed to him. I really do, in that he's a strong physical player. I think he's a good enough shooter, and I think you're going to see that as well. I think a lot of people think that his shooting is kind of a lost cause. I don't. I think that he is. I think he's going to be able to prove that to some folks. But defensively, he's an absolute pest. He can get up on you. And he can. We saw that in the Clemson game. He was so good at times that officials just started calling fouls on him just because it was like, well, I guess we got to call a foul on him because he's getting his hands everywhere. And that's just something that's instinctive to him. And you saw that as the season went on. He got better and better. And I look for that to continue to be the case for him. And a guy like that, I think it will always have a spot in the NBA as kind of a Patrick Beverley type. And he is, like I said, I think that there's a good chance that this year could be his last year. I think that he's going to play pretty much the whole season, and I think he's going to be about a 12-point, 4-rebound, 4-assist guy. But I also think that he is going to be one of the best defensive players. So if that were to happen, you're going to need somebody that can come in and you can hopefully fill that void. They would love for that to be Brayden Burries. Another one, though, that you could talk about is Mikel Brown. Mikel Brown out of the East Coast, he's a top 10 point guard as well. If you're looking at Brayden Burries or you're looking at Mikel Brown, it's kind of 6 in one, half dozen in the other. Both these young men are NBA players. They're both one and dones. They're a little bit different. Mikel Brown might be a little bit quicker, a little bit more dynamic off the bounce. But again, both NBA guys. He's a little bit slighter of frame than Brayden Burries, but Brayden Burries, you got to remember too, is also a year old for his class, so there's that in play as well. But Brown is somebody I'm not exactly sure what exactly the in that Arizona has in, but I expect Arizona to be able to get a visit from Brown, and I think it's going to be for one of Arizona's bigger games. And if Arizona can get a visit from Mikel Brown, then again, it's kind of game on at that point. You got to feel pretty good about your chances. And that's always kind of what it comes down to, is if you can get a kid on campus at Arizona for a really big game, you're generally going to like the opportunity that you're going to have because, again, Arizona plays big time competition, and these are fun games to watch. Tommy Lloyd runs a fun style, and they are going to be able to have a plethora of playing time available. We've seen that with Brayden Burries or with Mikel Brown. You're going to, if Jaden Bradley moves on, cool. But if Jaden Bradley stays, the way the Tommy Lloyd's offense goes, these guys will still be handling the ball a ton. Both of them would be guaranteed to start. And, it would just kind of be more of a 2-point guard type setup. I think that Tommy Lloyd was initially envisioning that being the case this coming year. But until Caleb Love came back and Kylan Boswell basically partied himself out of, a starting spot. But I think with these two guys, they would fit in just fine next to Jaden Bradley as well. Those are two priority players. Arizona would gladly take probably both, but obviously I think either would probably be the more appropriate term. Like I said, we'll continue to keep you updated on Mikel Brown. He is somebody that is a little bit new into the scene as far as being an Arizona recruit, but Arizona is definitely going to continue to recruit him, and they are going to continue to recruit him at a big time level. Now, a couple roster cleaning notes. This coaching staff is very, very high on Mount Crevis. I think there's a belief in this coaching staff that there's a chance that Mount Crevis could be gone after this year. And I think that's where Koa Peat really comes into play, because the staff loves Tobe Awaka. Tobe Awaka is he's going to be a center here. And if Mount Crevis were to go off to the NBA or declare, whatever the case may be, then I think that you obviously have your center position covered in Tobe Awaka, but then Koa Peat would obviously be your power forward. So that's something to very much keep in mind as well. And then obviously you're going to look to kind of buoy that with the transfer portal at times. But that's kind of what you're looking at from a front court perspective. Then Xavion Staten, kind of that same thing that we've talked about before. This coaching staff would love to get Staten, but with Staten, he's going to take a little bit of time. If he came to Arizona, he's probably not going to start right away. If he goes to, say, UNLV or another local school, if he goes to UNLV, he would probably start right away. And I think that's something that Arizona can't necessarily offer him. Now, Arizona can say that we can get you on the court 18 to 20 minutes per game, and I think it would be a very natural fit for Staten. But it is what it is at that point. Arizona can't just hand out minutes, because he's smart enough to know that Awaka, if Mount Crevis moves on, and just briefly on Mount Crevis, I think people need to understand this young man has skills. Like, I know that last year he looked kind of goofy at times and out of place, but he can shoot threes. He's got good back to the basket moves. He's got a higher upside than Umar Ballo, leader of men. And I think that's why this coaching staff felt more than okay with letting Umar leave, because I think that they know that they have a very, very capable replacement in Mount Crevis. So that's where you are with the front court. If Koa Peat comes here, he is going to be your starting power forward, period, point blank. And this would be a one-year stop, obviously, before he goes off into the NBA. I think that he would have he's a different player, but I think he would have an Aaron Gordon type impact. That's where I think that Arizona is with that. Now, we're going to talk about a couple other players here coming up in just a second. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. Okay, now, let's talk Akina Alozie. I'm very happy that Arizona decided to offer him. He is a dynamic basketball player. 2026. Keep in mind, we're going on to another different year here. But very, very athletic, about 6'2". Looks every bit the part of what a future NBA point guard should look like, has a very good feel for the game, can get downhill, can shoot the three, also a very good passer. I mean, there's not a lot of holes in his, in his repertoire when it comes to basketball. He's a very, very good basketball player. I think with Arizona, it was obviously a very good idea for him to offer, because keep in mind, with Mikel Brown and Brayden Burries, like we said, these are one-year players. These are guys that are not going to be in college long. They are going to be, this is a pit stop. They're going to be here, and they're going to go off to the NBA. Alozie would be the one that you would basically be able to have right next on the assembly line. And I think that's what you're hoping for if you are the University of Arizona, that Alozie could be that dude, because, he checks off all the boxes. And he would be ready to play from day one. He's not one of these players that's going to need a little bit of time. I mean, again, you can watch him for 5 seconds and say, yeah, that guy's a little bit different. As a matter of fact, I think if you were looking at Burries, if you were looking at Mikel Brown, and you were looking at Alozie, you could easily make the case that Alozie has the best upside out of any of these players. But that's been the one position that Tommy Lloyd has struggled with during his time here at the U of A. Everybody else, every other position has been solid, but, Kylan Boswell wasn't good. I mean, Kylan Boswell was a massive disappointment. I think a big reason why, obviously, is that he didn't take himself seriously. That is what it is. And, in all fairness, I think Tommy Lloyd kind of let him get away with way too much stuff. But then Kerr Kriisa just kind of is what he is. Kerr Kriisa could do some very good things on the basketball court, but Kerr was also a distraction and was going to be a 38% shooter, which to me wasn't worth it. I look for Jaden Bradley this year to be that first really good point guard of the Tommy Lloyd era. But then after that, you got to be able to kind of, keep going. I mean, keep in mind, if you got a really good point guard in college basketball, it can alleviate a lot of concerns across the board. And I think that's what Arizona is. Looking at. So, that's kind of where Arizona is. Hudson Greer, Arizona would love to get onto an official as well. But those are the names right now that I think you really need to know about. You need to know about Koa Peat. You need to know about Mikel Brown. You also need to know about Brayden Burries and Alozie. Those guys are kind of that, that mark right there. Now, tomorrow we're going to get back into Arizona football. We are going to talk a lot of T-Mac. T-Mac is ready to go. Watching him at practice, he's already beating DBs. He's making his ridiculous circus catches, and he's just looking every bit the part of, what a top 10 NFL wide receiver is supposed to look like. Teteroa McMillan, again, is one of those unicorns that comes through Arizona once every 10 to 15 years. He's the best wide receiver in this school's history, and I guess I had some questions about how quickly he'd be ready. I don't anymore. He looked just fine. And I think that he is going to have a monster season, a first-team All-American season as the best wide receiver in college football before he heads off to the NFL. That's where it is. And then we're also going to talk about the running game. I actually believe that Arizona's running game could be better this year than it was last year. And obviously the running game last year with Jonah Coleman, Michael Wiley, DJ Williams was obviously very good. But there's a lot to like about in this roster as well. A lot to like, and I think that this coaching staff knows it. Plus, you have a guy in Alonzo Carter that is going to look to get all of these players the ball as much as possible. Arizona's going to run the heck out of the football this year, and I think they're going to feel very good while they're doing it. I think they're going to look to have a power running game, and they're going to look to kind of push people around with some 2 tight end sets and a running game. So we're going to talk about all that. But wanted to get back into some Arizona basketball recruiting, kind of break everything down where everything stands. Arizona's in very good shape right now with Koa Peat, so that's obviously a very good thing. Wanted to intro you a little bit to Mikel Brown. Then Brayden Burries give you the update at Alozie. But tomorrow we're going to get right back into Arizona football. So as always, very much appreciate you all making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Mike Luke. Bear down, back the A, and we will be back with you tomorrow.